Hey everyone, welcome to the webinar on audience research for e-commerce. Sorry we're a little bit delayed, but technology getting set up. So sorry about that. As most of you probably know, my name is Greg. I am the head of marketing over at Empire Flippers. And today we have a very special guest with us, Rand Fishkin, the founder of SparkToro, as well as one of the OG founders of Moz and one of my OG role models when I got started in internet marketing way back in the days. This is really cool that I get to introduce you, Rand, and I think this is going to be dope because I love this stuff. I love marketing research. I'm a big nerd for it, and I don't think many people like really do it. At least don't do it well. And I think your tool is just fascinating. Is very unique in the space. There's nothing really like it, but don't let me hog the light. Rand, why don't you introduce yourself to the crowd here and talk a little bit about yourself and how you came up with SparkToro?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So first off, Greg and Michelle and everyone at Empire Flippers, thanks for having me. Yeah, good to be here. And let's see. I started SparkToro the day after I left Moz, so 2018. It has been a company for about 4 years, but it's only been a product for 2 years, so it's relatively new. Would not be surprising if folks haven't heard of it. We're a very small company. It's there's only 3 of us. We raised a little bit of money, but in a very unique way. Did not go the venture route for this company, unlike Moz, which of course raised a lot of money and tried to go big fast. This one is a little bit more focused on being an indie style company and a zebra more than a unicorn. SparkToro is relatively unique. That we do have, I don't know if they're like direct competitors, but I'll mention them because I don't like just blowing my own horn. So I'll talk through a number of pieces of software, but I figured, Greg, for you and folks, I would describe how SparkToro does what it does, because I thought that might be relatively useful and interesting. So my co-founder and I, Casey and I, saw some agencies and consultants and also some in-house marketing teams basically using a process that we thought was genius, but way, way, way too difficult. So they would, these teams would basically say, hey, we want to learn a lot more about our customers' behavior so that we can go do smart marketing in all the right places, as opposed to just waiting until they search Google for something to try and get them, or doing, brand advertising or targeted display advertising, retargeting, all those kinds of things, kind of the performance marketing stuff of the digital world. We would love, right? Brands and agencies want to be in the places where our audiences pay attention, but we don't know what those are. Like, we know it's a really good idea to be there. We don't know what those are. So they would take their customer email list and they would upload it to a Clearbit or a Full Contact, or there's another company now called Pipl, Pipl. And so you can take your email list, upload it to these firms, and they will do what's called identity resolution. So they'll try and take all those email addresses and turn them into social URLs, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, whatever it is, which is great. So then they had 2 options from there, which was sort of like, one, go and manually analyze, like, okay, let's, poor intern is going to like go click on 500 people's Twitter profiles and like try and aggregate all the information in there. Or more saliently, they would build a crawler, right? So they grab a couple engineers, build a crawler to go crawl all the profiles of all their customers that they could find, and then get data like, who are they following on Twitter? Which LinkedIn groups are they part of? What do their profiles say? And what do their bios say? And what are their posts and updates, right? What words and phrases they use? What hashtags they use? What groups are they part of? What YouTube channels they subscribe to, right? Genius, like super smart, brilliant way to understand your audience better. But it has 2 fundamental problems, right? One is you're getting a huge selection bias. So you're only getting the customers that you already know about, not any of the ones that you don't, right? You're only getting the ones that are on your email lists already, as opposed to ones who maybe haven't heard of you or aren't in your world yet, or competitors, customers, that kind of thing. And the second one is, this literally costs, we were talking to folks who spent $250,000, $300,000, $500,000 on a project like this, and it took them a year, right? Because,
Wow.
you got to assemble a big team. You have to like do all this identity resolution. You got to build the technology to do it. You got to crawl the data and then analyze it. And of course, there's lots of, Twitter will block you if you crawl too hard. LinkedIn will block you if you crawl too hard. So they try to do all these things. And Casey and I were like, oh my God, these poor marketers, like, that sucks. We should just build that thing for the entire internet, right? Like, you shouldn't have to go manually every time and take your list. Like, what if you could just go to a giant database of all the publicly accessible web and social profiles and say, all right, show me the behaviors of chemical engineers in the UK. Show me the behaviors of interior designers in Los Angeles. Show me the behavior of people who talk about Dungeons and Dragons online. Show me the behavior
That's
of people.
me. I'm on that one.
Awesome. I mean, me too, probably. I don't talk about it because I'm deeply ashamed and embarrassed, but I play almost every week. So,
you got to be more proud about it, Rand. Maybe we'll do Internet Marketers D&D session only.
I mean, Greg, you don't understand how much I was like beat up in middle school for talking about D&D. So now I just keep it to myself.
No, it's cool. It's cool now.
It is cool now.
I gotta say, your personality resolution. There's a company, I'm forgetting the name of it, but it was very similar to what you described, like this very laborious, very expensive process that I almost did actually for EF a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But I gotta say, like, it is exactly what you said. It is wicked complex and it's not user friendly at all. Like, just like aggregating the data in a useful way. But one of the things I love about what you talked about is, so I don't know if you agree with this. This is kind of a controversial statement, but I do not like buyer personas in marketing.
No,
I think
like
the way that they're normally created. Oh, great. Yeah. Like, I think they're too idealistic. Like this is my ideal customer that does X, Y, and Z at this time of the day. Like it like never pans out. So like, so using something like SparkToro, you can see like what are people really doing, like the job to be done, which I love about what you built.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that I really dislike in the persona world, I think you're right. I haven't thought about the too idealistic in terms of, hey, let's just craft our perfect customer and then imagine who they are. But I think it is like deeply reductive to the point of stereotyping and bias, right? So like,
yes,
I see all 100%. The time. Yeah, right. I see all the time there, companies will be like, well, we make, tools for developers. So we're going to make super bro-y dude-centric content. And, like, technically you're right. When you look in SparkToro, you can see that the, gender and age, like it does trend a little bit, it's heavy between 20 and 40. It gets a little lighter, up to 50 and much lighter after 60. But you look at the gender distribution and it's like, yeah, so it's like 65% dudes. So really you want to exclude like a full third of your audience? That is, that's weird to me, right? Like why not create something that is actually targeted at, all your customers, or at least multiple campaigns targeted at different groups of your customers. And, I don't really like gender and age as discriminators, but I think that certainly, hey, this portion of our audience, visits these websites and follows these social accounts and like subscribes to these YouTube channels, listens to these podcasts, attends these events, follow these press sources. Now you can do some really sophisticated thinking about what content are we going to create, for whom, where are we going to place it, where are we going to amplify it? If we're going to do advertising, where are we going to do that? If we're going to do co-marketing, where are we going to do that? If I'm going to join a webinar with somebody, who should I join it with? Right? Like, it's
definitely a D&D person.
Yeah, like I'm just saying, right? Like I think you should put all your points into wisdom, and like I don't know if you necessarily need them in strength and con for at least for this marketing exercise.
For sure. I guess to bring it back to like the value of this, because like I said earlier at the top, I feel like a lot of marketers don't do this. Like they're obsessed with PPC or SEO. Like let's test a million different creatives, which, that's fine. But like, I think I'm a big believer in like understanding the core of an audience, and that kind of informs everything else, right? So like if an e-commerce entrepreneur does this, like uses SparkToro, like have you seen people's ad like just take like a Facebook ad or something like that? Have you seen the increase dramatically from you doing this kind of audience research? Like what's your stories there?
Yeah. So I would say good number. I mean, certainly depends, right? I would say there's some e-commerce where the audience is so broad that their behaviors are sort of indistinguishable from population at large, right? So for example, if you're selling diapers, virtually every kind of person and parent or something like that, right? Like it's just so broad that it's really hard to go target it. Now, could you do things like, hey, from a product perspective, we want to make biodegradable, environmentally friendly. We're going to target a green audience. We're going to look for, generally speaking, higher income, higher education folks to do that. We want to find people who, I don't know, follow whatever sources of influence in like renewable energy and environmentally safe practices. Great, awesome, right? SparkToro can super help you do that. Just don't search SparkToro for my audience frequently talks about diapers.
That makes sense. So you kind of, if you do have that generic big product, you want to find that wedge, right? So that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think this is probably the biggest challenge that I see folks having with SparkToro is, and I blame myself, right? Primarily because, Greg, as you mentioned at the start, I come from this background of SEO software. So a lot of people who have heard of me or like know something about my past are like, aha, RAND means SEO. And so they go to SparkToro and they search for SEO keywords. Like seriously, this is Casey and I, when we look at the logs of people who have success in the product versus people who like just don't get it and leave frustrated, I swear like 90% of the frustrated people are people who assume SparkToro must be for SEO. And SparkToro knows nothing about what an audience searches for. It does not interact with Google at all. It has no search keywords, no SEO data at all. Part of that is because we're building a different kind of product, right, for a different purpose. And part of that is because when I left Moz, I had to sign a very strict non-compete. And so it would be super illegal for me to make SEO software.
Let me just go start this competitor real quick.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I see your rants on LinkedIn about it all the time. Like, this is not an SEO tool. Meanwhile, my all my SEO friends, like, I'm using this as an SEO tool. I don't care what rant says.
Well, and look, I mean, there are absolutely ways that if you are doing certain types of SEO, right? So one of the things that SEOs do a lot of is, where should I place content? Where should I try to get a link from? What kind of content might my audience be interested in? And yes, right, those are things that SparkToro can tell you, not specifically for SEO, but you can apply that knowledge, right? You could look at, oh, hey, here's all the topics that this audience is talking about. Oh man, I haven't done any keyword research around like these 5. Guess what? I'm going to SEMrush or Moz or whatever, and I'm going to do my keyword research based on these topics that SparkToro told me chemical engineers in the UK are interested in. Great, like phenomenal. I love it. Use it for that, right? A lot of folks, I think, use it for whatchamacallit, their performance advertising too, right? Like they're essentially like, I don't want to go, and I understand, like, I don't want to go through the pain of like all the content placement and co-marketing and trying to pitch podcasts and whatever. I just want to make my Facebook ads better. And Facebook's ad interface, as I'm sure everyone on this call knows, sucks. Like, it has gotten so much worse the last 4 years. They've taken away so much data since Cambridge Analytica, right? That they used to show about whatever your page's insights and an audience that you search for in Facebook ads and whatever. And now their pitch is, just let us do all the targeting for you.
The robots will take care of it. Don't worry about it.
Exactly. And that's such an expensive proposition. And frankly, if you trust Facebook with your money, like, oh, you got a lot more faith than I do. And so, right, you can go to SparkToro and be like, okay, I'm looking at whatever this audience that's interested in Japanese cooking, and I can see which Facebook pages are popular with them, which Facebook ads won't show me. And so now I can go bid against the audiences and put those into my lookalikes or build similar audience sets for. Great, phenomenal, right? And you can get much deeper on the targeting there too. I think that's all super smart for people who are persona building. Like, I don't love personas, but if you want to build a statistically sound, data backable persona, SparkToro will be like, yes, here's the gender and age distribution, here's the geography, here's the skills and interests, here's the education levels of your audience. And so you can go to whatever management or the product team or your client and be like, hey, we don't know everything, but we certainly know that this is reflective of the diverse characteristics and behaviors of an online audience.
For sure. I've personally used it at EF to pitch podcasts, like what your throwaway comment there. So I like, EF, we saw a bunch of different business models, right? I can't be a master of all of them. So I'll use SparkToro as my cheat tool to like, all right, who is big in FBA today? Like who is doing big and stuff in e-commerce right now that I should go connect with? Because so much of my marketing is about connecting with influencers, right? So that I can educate their audience. But yeah, that's awesome. I guess let's dive into the actual tool and give people some of the ideas of what's behind the hood here.
You bet. All right, let's do window, SparkToro, share. All right, so hopefully you are seeing that now. And
yep,
cool. Okay, so like I mentioned, SparkToro is just a giant database of profiles, and it's a relatively simple product. So basically, these 82 million profiles, what we consider a profile is like, here's Rand on Twitter, and it points to his LinkedIn. His LinkedIn points to a website. That website points to his Instagram and his Facebook and his Reddit and his YouTube. All of those taken together are all one profile. So we cover 12 social networks. Our strongest network by far is Twitter. LinkedIn comes in second, and then it's sort of like Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube, Medium, Quora, GitHub, all that kind of stuff. We don't cover TikTok at all, and that is for important reasons.
It's very suspenseful.
Well, let's see. I think the owners of TikTok generally are interested in the collapse of Western democracy. And so I get very nervous about sort of like interacting with their data.
You can feel the brutality of their algorithm. I don't know if you've ever used it, but so I played around with it. And like without even having an account, like it just like it's hitting you with the videos, right? And me as a marketer, I'm thinking about open loops, right? To keep an audience engaged, you create all these open loops, and like TikTok is like this endless open loop because it's like 30-second videos that never get to the climax. So you're always trying to reach the crescendo because the next video, like, oh, this is so addictive.
Yeah, no, the addictive property is one thing. I think Instagram has had for a long time, like some of that, right, too, and YouTube's up next thing and all that kind of stuff. But whereas sort of, I don't think highly of Facebook's ethics or anything, but I think that they generally share an interest in sort of like keeping, civilization, at least in our democracy, like kind of running the way it is, versus TikTok, who kind of has like the opposite incentive. And so that makes me nervous. And so does any kind of like doing any data deals with them makes me very nervous. Anyway, blah, blah, blah.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So you can take this giant audience of essentially, websites and social networks and the profiles that we build off of those. We only do public ones, and we anonymize and aggregate. So, we can only crawl what Google crawls. We can only put in our index what Google is allowed to put in their index. And so if folks are like, hey, is my personal identifiable information in there? Nope, that's not what we do. We don't, if you search for chemical engineers in the UK, for example, we will not show you a list of them. You will not see the chemical engineers whose data we, store. We have thrown away the personally identifiable information. What we're showing you is percentiles of their behavior and their demographics. So we aggregate, we anonymize, and then we show you statistics based on them, on that group, not the group itself. Right. So, for example, you could say, this one's going to be relatively obvious, but if you look at people who follow me, right, on social media, this is across my, I think my biggest audience is Twitter, but LinkedIn is second, and then Instagram. And so this is not everyone who follows me. This is probably about maybe a third to a quarter, right? So we have a sample of the larger web. And what you're seeing essentially is, okay, of people who follow Randfish on one or more of his social networks, these are words that you find in their bios. So lots of people saying web, probably web marketing. That would be my guess, but I don't know, maybe web strategist, or, could be a lot of things. Founder, marketer, agency, company. Okay. So you get like—
They're all Web3 now, right now, Rand.
Sorry?
They're all Web3. They're all Web3.
Oh God, you're probably right. I wish it was web marketing.
They'll become SEOs again.
And then you can see hashtag. So for example, right, you might say, oh man, if for example, let's say you and I did something together like this webinar, and you were like, gosh, when we did that thing with Rand, it was very successful in terms of like reaching his audience on social. And I would like to find more people who are like Rand to do that with again. And essentially SparkToro would be great for this. You could say, okay, I know that I probably want to advertise or post with the hashtag digital marketing and content marketing next, and SMM. You know what I'm really proud of here, Greg? This totally used to be, this was all search stuff. Like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was all SEO, Google, all that. And so it has evolved, which is nice to see.
Your reputation is adapting to the new normal.
Yeah. Whew. At long last, right? You can see like the skills that my audience mentioned are getting a little less SEO centric and a little more social media and online marketing, digital marketing, and then gender and age stuff. And you can see social accounts they follow the most. So probably not surprising, a lot of my audience follows Moz. 10% follows. But tragically, we just lost Bill. Yeah.
Before we move on, I don't want to forget to mention this to you, but I've interacted with Moz. I think you might have still been on Moz when I wrote this, but I wrote a guest post for you guys. And then Tim Solo at HRES, I was at a conference, and I had never really met Tim Solo at this point. Like, him and I joked around a bit on Twitter or on Facebook, and he was sitting next to me. He's like, have you seen your post on Moz? I was like, the one I wrote? He's like, yes. Have you seen it? Like, I mean, yeah, I saw it published. Like, why are you bringing this up? And he's like, this is the third highest trafficked post on Moz outside of their login page and homepage. Like, really? He's like, yes, you need to write it for HRES, but even better. So I got a guest post to HRES because of Moz.
Amazing. Oh my God, I love that. I mean, that sort of stuff is exactly what we're trying to do, right? Like, trying to enable that, hey, I found, I had success in one source, and I want to go to another. So, right. So this data here, essentially you might look at this and say, oh gosh, only 1%, is that low? I think this is quite high, because we're talking about websites, and in websites, we can only see website sharing and engagement behavior from basically Twitter, LinkedIn, and a little bit of Facebook, because as Instagram, obviously you can't really share websites. And we only see this when someone posts a link to that website or replies to a post that someone else has done for a website, right? So, I look at this and I say, oh, okay, look, that is really interesting. Like, this might be a perfect person for, I think if I remember correctly, so she has a podcast. This might be a perfect place for me to pitch and say, like, hey, I want to reach more of the audience that I'm already reaching, and I should go on her podcast, right? And that's exactly the kind of marketing that you might want to do.
I wonder about this hidden gems section of your platform for a while, because I've used the hidden gem thing as well to find interesting people to talk to. But how do you decide, like, how does the software know, like, hey, this is a hidden gem? Is it because there's a smaller percentage of the users are just like looking at that? Is that how it works? Or
no. So the way that you can see the little, it's accounts with high engagement relative to their audience size. So for example, when you see Lilac Bullock in there, it basically means that her audience, when she shares content or when her website puts out content, it is shared and amplified and engaged with at a much higher rate than we would expect based on how large or how popular her account is. So it's kind of like, gosh, that's an overperformer for their sort of audience size.
Niche industry. Yeah. That's cool. It's cool.
Yeah. So you can, there's all these different filters in here, right? You could say like, oh, I really want only hidden gems and I want to apply that. You could say, gosh, I'm doing whatever it is. I'm doing a campaign in Chicago, particularly. I want to try and find some influential sources that are in Chicago. And then it's like, okay, well, there you go. These people are in Chicago. And if maybe you want to do a local event that reaches kind of the digital marketing audience, these might be the people that you would invite to speak at that event or help promote it or whatever, right? Because they're clearly influential there. In other sections like demographics, this is obviously all coming from LinkedIn, right? So employer industries, job roles and fields, company size, skills and interests. I think that, let's see, gender and age is a mix. So this comes from Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And we basically, we look for a few signals like people who put pronouns in there or people who, say something about their mom or dad or whatever in their bio, that they're a parent. And then you can see education levels, right? So my audience, lots of college graduates, but not a ton of advanced degrees. I was looking at radiologists earlier, and they're all masters and doctorates, right? And you can see geography, you could see politics. So if you were trying to figure out whether certain types of messaging might work well, and what do they follow, that sort of thing. We have, as I mentioned, data on websites, and you can filter those by other things too, right? So I could look for hidden gems here. I could slide. Moz generously provides domain authority in their API, so we use that in here.
Awesome.
You can see podcasts. So this is essentially specifically podcasts that are associated with an account that is highly followed by the audience. So hard to say, is it for sure that 30% of this audience listens to the Search Engine Journal show? No, but they certainly engage with the podcast's accounts. So that's probably
a good shot.
Yeah. High signal that this, and you can see it, right? So like radiologists, I think the highest podcast is like 12% or 10% or something. But obviously in digital marketing universe, we listen to a lot of podcasts, right? So the numbers tend to be much higher. And then, the idea here might be that you say, okay, well, I want to be on this show. Breakthrough success sounds good. Okay, paid search podcast, online marketing with Amy Porterfield, right? Like these all seem relevant. Rework, CXCast, no, SEO 101, right? And then you would add them to your list, and essentially, where do I have some marketing related list here? I've built way too many lists in here, as you can tell. Well, here we can go up, right, and you can see all my lists. Well, I'll show you YouTube, right, and which has kind of the same data, but all YouTube channels, right? So we'll show you the number of subscribers, when they last posted an update, a new video. We'll do the same for press. So these are essentially mainstream media sources as a filter. And then you can go to lists and see, for example, okay, this fashion blog that wants to reach, right, maybe people in the fashion universe. Okay, there's business of fashion. Maybe I want to reach out to them, and there's contact information, right? This is via hunter.io, right? So these are the email contacts and social contacts if you want to do DMs on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, which I kind of recommend, to be honest, doing that rather than a cold email, but up to you.
DMs are way better. I literally just, so before this call, I was talking to the founder of Priceline, one of the guys who started it. And it literally happened because I listened to him on a podcast, and I found him on LinkedIn and sent him a message, which I do to interesting people all the time. Usually they don't respond, but this guy did. So I had like a whole hour call with him, and he's coming to like Vietnam. I'm like, oh, cool, because I live in Vietnam, so we're
Oh,
going for
wow.
beers. So yeah, I highly recommend anyone out there, if you want to collaborate with someone, DMing on social media usually is way more successful than a cold email.
Yeah, I mean, I am a really big fan of basically two things. One, getting a warm intro. Like somebody knows somebody and they connect me. I don't care what you want to do with the person. Like it is going to be far more effective if you get that warm intro than if you don't. And yeah, very frankly, if you can't get that warm intro, I think people are far more used to sort of strangers reaching out and starting a connection over a LinkedIn message or a Twitter DM or an Instagram DM than they are a cold email. And cold emails have just gotten so burnt as a tactic.
They can sometimes work for me. Like I've connected with people over email, but social media is so much easier, and it's completely uncrowded because most people are spamming the inbox are not spamming the social inbox. Well, LinkedIn maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I check my LinkedIn messages, but yeah, I would say you can often forge a relationship that way. So, for example,
I'll
right,
send
in
you
the
$100
e-commerce world,
gift card on LinkedIn, Brand.
yeah, totally. So in the e-commerce world,
favorite.
I have one of these Japanese donabe. So there's this. Which one is mine? Yeah, this one. So this, I don't want to charge them money. Let's see. I think it's this specific. Yeah. So I have one of these. I love it. I think it's amazing. It makes phenomenal rice. It's like this beautiful sort of showpiece, and it's really fun to, I don't know, just interact with generally. It's very sensitive. Like you can only heat it to a certain temperature and you have to take a lot of care of it, but I love it. Like, I think it's just this beautiful thing. And it was essentially sold to me because these sources of influence that I pay attention to in the food world kept bringing it up, right? Like, I think it was in Serious Eats, and then I saw it mentioned in a few other places that I follow. Oh, one of them was Just One Cookbook, which you can do this too, right? So you could be like, Just One. I think that's, oh yeah, click here to analyze that one. Is that right? Just One Cookbook. So this woman writes a great website that is like a Japanese cooking blog, which I became obsessed with during the pandemic and was like, just trying to cook lots and lots of Japanese dishes. And so, yeah, you can see sort of information about where to reach those audiences and what they engage with. And yeah, so sure enough, right, like 31% engage with Serious Eats, 90% follow the woman who's behind this particular website. So what's interesting about this is follow or engage with on any social channel, right? So it's probably like 40% Twitter and like 20%, Facebook, and 10% her Instagram, or whatever numbers, right? But that data, it can be invaluable. So yeah, you can see Twitter, website, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, YouTube. Oh man, she's got a crazy YouTube following. So, this is like, hey, if I am trying to sell Japanese donabe, and Just One Cookbook has been a very successful source of referrals for me, plug that in, go find a bunch of other websites, social accounts, podcasts, YouTube channels, and whatever kind of marketing you're doing, right? Whether it's paid, and so, you want to go to your Facebook and your Google account and, whatever, your Reddit advertising, your Twitter advertising, your Instagram advertising, and like put that all together with information that you can get here. Or you're doing it more from a content perspective or a social media marketing perspective or an SEO perspective. It's exactly what you talked about, right? You understand the audience, what they talk about, hashtags that they use, phrases and topics that they're talking about. And so then you can say like, French toast, that doesn't sound Japanese to me. Well, my friend, let me urge you to do some research because Japanese French toast is gosh darn amazing. It's like a weird custardy type of French toast. I realize it's getting to be lunchtime for folks on the East Coast, so they're probably like, stop talking about Japanese French toast. It's so good.
They all just went and bought the rice cooker.
Yeah, but it's this kind of thing that you can learn about your audience and then apply to your marketing, whatever kind of marketing you're doing, that is just invaluable.
Yeah, I love that. Like, so for most of my e-commerce friends, say they have a Shopify store, or even let's just say they're selling on Amazon and they're trying to send external traffic to it, right? Like, a lot of them never think about this type of stuff. Like like that Amazon FBA entrepreneur could go to, let's say they're selling something related to cooking or whatever. They can go build a relationship with just one cookbook, do like a guest post, a social media post, whatever. And none of their competitors are doing that because they're obsessed with just like random Amazon PPC on the high intent. They're not thinking about these kind of relationships they can form. And like that one post, like getting just one cookbook to promote, could lead to that landslide. And now suddenly Rand's buying your thing because he's looking at all these foodie blogs that are talking about your product on Amazon, right? Like, I just think that is such a like a ninja way of doing it. And most of my entrepreneur friends never really considered like the content marketing approach to it, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what's fascinating is if you deeply understand your sector front to back, you've been in your industry for like 10 years, you know all the buyers, SparkToro will tell you a lot of things you know and probably some interesting things you don't know, right? Like you'll be able to find, okay, I'm going to plug in this website that I know sends me good traffic and has a bunch of affinity. Okay, these other ones have high affinity, these topics I wouldn't have known about, whatever. That's awesome. But even at the very highest level, if you are entering a new sector or you're selling to a new audience, like, hey, we've got this, I don't know, specialized rock analysis machine. I have no idea, right? And so like, oh, I want
to analyze these rocks.
Yeah, like whatever, right? My audience uses the word geologist in their profile. And so now SparkToro is going to go out and find anyone whose profile on any of their social sites says that they're a geologist, which I don't know anything about that world. Like my mom had a friend when I was a kid who was a geologist, but I don't know anything about it, right? So, okay. Yeah, looks like fascinating, right? This is geophysics, mineral explanation. So, just completely different world from any digital marketing or like, the Japanese cooking thing. And I've never heard of Geosociety, but it sounds promising. I don't know who Ian Stewart is, or I've never heard of Geology News, but like now I can go into kind of a, any type of marketing activity with some information. Like I understand, that's a clever name, Third Pod from the Sun. Cute, right? Like I understand this audience. After looking through this, right, I could spend literally probably 15 minutes on one search, look through, start researching, right? Start opening some of these up, start listening to a couple podcasts, maybe watching some of these YouTube channels, subscribing to some of these folks on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. And I now know a tremendous amount about this audience. I can probably market to them better. I can craft content for them better. I can write headlines for them better. I can figure out what events and what products are going to be interesting to them. Like this is really, really hard to do through just Googling around, because Google just doesn't tell you, if you search for geologists in Google, like it's just not, it's not giving you information about them. Like this is not.
The part in SparkToro was showing the associations. That brings me back to when I was, still in the oil field and trying to make an agency work for me, which was really hard to do when you're working like 12, 18 hours a day. But I remember one of the pieces of advice I got that SparkToro would have been super helpful on would be like, all right, find a niche, like say, I don't know, like carpenters, go after people who own their own carpentry store or whatever, and like niche down, right? But like on Google, you search for like these associations of carpenters, like this might be like a dead site or whatever. Like no one even interacts with this association. But with this, you can see people actually interacting with those different groups. Like, oh, so I can go to the Third Pod from the Sun because I know people are actually engaged with that brand. So it's actually worth my time building a relationship with that brand, right?
Absolutely. And I think, podcast sponsorship, podcast guest pitching, like these are completely underrated tactics. And because they're very underrated, you generally have a competitive advantage just by investing. Like you don't have to be great at it. You can just start pitching podcasts or sponsoring podcasts, and you can do really well with that channel because none of your competitors are playing in it. And podcast hosts are like, oh my God, a brand reaching out to me.
You paid.
So great. You know,
Right. Yeah,
it's weird.
exactly.
It's sort of like, it's kind of like the very first wave of Instagram influencers, like 10 years ago, 9 years ago, right? When nobody was doing influencer marketing. And so brands could just make a killing by finding a few people who are influential on Instagram and, you know, paying them a few $100 to like, whatever, show their 6-pack abs and pose with your toaster or you know, whatever it is.
Makes the best toast. You won't believe it.
It's not Japanese French toast though. So, you know, right? Like carpentry is a great example of this. Like I have no idea what's popular in the carpentry world. If you were to tell me, you know, oh, no one who's a real carpenter pays attention to DeWalt TV, I'd be like, sure, I believe that, until I verified it. Like, I don't know how you would learn this data just from, you know, if you go to their YouTube page, it's not going to tell you, this is who our audience is. Like YouTube won't give you that information. They won't tell you, oh, this is amateurs, or this is people who like don't know how to do house repairs, or this is professionals. Like, I don't know. I don't know who's paying attention to this channel. And that is deeply frustrating, right? We're talking about 73,000 subscribers. If they want, you know, if YouTube's charging me an arm and a leg to advertise against this channel, I need to be damn sure that they're my people.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the job of SparkToro, right? The job of SparkToro is to say, this percent of this audience pays attention to this place. So subscribers, number of views, last video, like all interesting stuff. There's nothing wrong with that data. I think it's useful. It helps you. But honestly, the biggest thing SparkToro does is just tell you this one number.
Yeah, to me, I think that's huge, right? Like, I can't remember the example, but there was some company that I thought like, oh, this one like makes total sense. But if I remember, I put them into SparkToro. There's just like nothing going on here. I was like, okay, well, that saved me a ton of work.
Yeah, right. Like
maybe I'll do like a social exchange or something, but not do
it's not that SparkToro knows. You know, it doesn't know everything about everything. But if you said, hey, do people on especially Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, you know, Reddit, Instagram, YouTube, do the people who mark themselves in whatever way you searched for, right? Like people who use the hashtag carpentry, do they interact with, you know, architecture stuff? And the answer is, yeah, a little bit, right? Like they are in architecture world. Should you go and pitch Architectural Digest for a, you know, run of site takeover? And I think to answer that question, you can go and click on, let's analyze their audience, search for it, and then look at the demographics and be like, ooh, I don't know. I mean, we'll find out in a second here, but like I would be concerned that you would be reaching a far less targeted crowd versus, oops, what did I do wrong? Okay. Right, like that you'd be reaching a far less targeted crowd. This, right, interior designers, posted photos, like, real estate people. I'm not sure carpentry, if you're trying to reach like folks interested in carpentry, I think we might want to go back and look at Pro Tool reviews and see what that website's audience looks like, analyze them.
That's an affiliate website ready to sell on EF, I'm sure of it.
I'm just saying, right? Like,
I have no idea. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, like much smaller audience, right? You know, Architectural Digest has been around since what, like the 30s or the 40s or something. Yeah. And I gotta watch myself. Soon we're gonna start saying the 30s, and people will be like, the 2030s?
The 2030s?
But so you can see in here, and you'd be like, oh yeah, this is a carpentry crowd. Like you can just tell right from this, right up here. And you're right. Look, it looks super affiliate-y. And right, the frequently used phrase is gift card, link, earn, official, like you're on it, right? But I wouldn't know that. Without looking, I wouldn't know that.
The other website, another thing I think that is quite interesting with this tool. So the site that had like a bunch of realtors and interior decorators, it looked like on it, like that could still be a very useful audience. If you're selling to carpenters, let's say, then you go to that website, you notice like, okay, this has some affiliation with carpenters, but it's mostly say realtors, but a lot of realtors know carpenters. So you could create content for the realtors that lead to them introducing you to the carpenters, right? And like in the
If you can
in an
find,
e-commerce context, it would be like I don't know, selling a camping stove, and you find all these people that like this very specific kind of like, I don't know, Arctic camping, and you can combine that with your stove, like how why this makes sense for your Arctic camping, right?
I mean, I think that these, what, I'm trying to remember. There's a word for them, like the non-obvious affinities. So, right, sort of affinities that you might not recognize, like the one between carpentry and interior design. You know, reflecting on it, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's intuitive, that makes sense. But if you go to, for example, whatever Google search, or you go to Ahrefs, SEMrush, Moz, and you jump into the keyword research there, you're not going to necessarily see, people who search for X also search for Y. You're only going to see related keywords. And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that is not the same thing, right? Because
I,
it's not like, those platforms can track a searcher over many search sessions, and Google doesn't provide that information for obvious
for
reasons, right? Because they
sure.
want you to have to
I,
bid on it.
I I think a really good way to look at this type of stuff, so like SEO with Ahrefs, for example, or SEM Rush, it's a very linear path that you're going on versus SparkToro. It's kind of like this big collaborative path of like just meshing all this stuff together, which to me, like as a more creative marketer nowadays than an SEO marketer, I find so valuable because like that's how you come up with all these like intriguing ideas, interesting angles and hooks. Like I would have never thought about like combining carpenter and interior designer in a one angle, but now it makes sense. And I found it because of this, audience research I'm doing. So for the people out there watching this webinar, like we're kind of like all over the place a little bit, but like with your own e-commerce business, because we're both, by the way, very highly creative people, so we're very just easily all over the place. But like with your e-commerce store, you have all these opportunities, and I promise you, no one's doing this. Like, none of my friends in the space does this kind of stuff, which I think is so valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're getting to the end of time here, Greg. So if folks wanted to have
Sure.
Q&A, or we wanted to talk about other topics, I don't want to take up everyone's time with just
Yeah.
hey, come look at this thing I built.
Sure. So my friend Bibi, who is an SEO, she asked a question earlier. Let me see. She wanted to know how she could use SparkToro to come up with linkable assets, basically. So I think SparkToro is actually a really good tool for that personally. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So the way I think about this is essentially, I want to say, first off, I haven't been in the SEO field for 4 years. So my knowledge of how linkable assets work and how they help improve a business is a little rusty. But I would say this: I think that one of the most valuable things that you can do inside of SparkToro is to deeply understand an audience and what they pay attention to, what they talk about, what topics are resonating with them, and then piggyback on top of that with the content that you create. And don't just do it for your audience, right? So we were talking about, like, here's how this whatever realtor audience behaves. Go look at the sources of influence in the realtor world, right? So sorry to, I'll share the screen really briefly again, but
Go ahead.
window share. Right. Okay. So here's this, right? Realtor audience. I would be really interested to see what is it that Realtor Magazine and Realtor.com and Zillow and Inman and Trulia and NAR Research and Real Estate Marketing Tips, what do they link to? What do they talk about? Is it, hey, here's a study on home buyers, here's a large scale survey, here's a market research report about the, I don't know, whatever, Denver area home buyers, whatever you want, right? Like, oh, here's, migration patterns during the pandemic and how many people actually, net migrated to California versus away, like whatever. That kind of stuff, knowing what these sources of influence link to by following them and subscribing to them and putting them in your Google News feed or whatever, your newsreader, probably a really, really good way to stay up on the market. I'll give you an example. Like, I mean, this is slightly embarrassing, but
Perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah. So, okay. So first off, I just want to be clear that these headlines are dumb and wrong, but they all link to us. So here we go. So we did this analysis. I don't know if you saw, like, Elon Musk wants to buy Twitter, right? So he's putting this bid.
Great bot debate.
Yeah, and then he was like, actually, until I can verify that less than 5% of all Twitter accounts are bots or spam or whatever, the deal is on hold. So SparkToro was like, we were like, oh, we actually have a lot of data on this. Like, in order to build this, our audience research tool, right? Like, we have to know which ones to crawl. We have to know that a realtor is a real realtor and not a bot or a spam account or just like a fake follower or an account that's been inactive for like a year or more, right? We need to know that this person has real activity. They look human. They're not spam. So we were like, hey, we can do that, right? We pay attention to the field. We look at like things that are happening. And I mean, look, I don't want to say, I don't know if other folks use this. I really like BuzzSumo's alerts. Yes, log in. Yes, it's me. But monitoring alerts. So I have this. What? Okay. So, right, we published, let's just do the past month. We published this piece, right, last week, and you can see what happened. Like, hundreds and hundreds of publications picked up and talked about this piece of content, right? And there's all these articles about SparkToro analyzing this data. We worked with a company called Follower Wonk, which has a bunch of other Twitter data to do this. And then we put out this report and this graphic and basically said, yeah, look, if you were to analyze only accounts that sent a tweet in the last 90 days, you would find that about 20% of them, on Twitter at least, are not real, like not operated by a human, which isn't to say they're bad. Some of them could be good bots or, good accounts, but they're not human beings who are going to see ads. And so, like, this type of thing, this is a great linkable asset. It absolutely, sent ludicrous amounts of traffic to us. You can imagine that by being in a lot of these really sketchy news organizations, I should use news organizations, Breitbart and whatever, like, we also got a ton of really nasty stuff too, right? Because anytime right-wing media writes about you, they it doesn't go well. Even though
usually not a party, yeah.
Yeah, generally speaking, Elon announced he was becoming a Republican, and so like right-wing media was generally more favorable. But even still, it was, a bunch of people like found my wife's account, and so then she's getting like all these death and rape threats, and it's just
God.
like, oh God.
Wow.
Back to
the internet could be a wonderful and terrible place at once.
Yeah. But my broader point is, by paying attention to what an audience is talking about and specifically what the sources of influence of that audience are talking about, you can really have, great insight into what they're likely to link to and what they won't link to. So if you look at, a lot of sources today, expert roundups have kind of been lost. Like, nobody is linking to expert roundups anymore. But
the SEO agencies selling them are, Rand.
Sorry?
I said the SEO agencies that sell the roundups, they're still linking to them. They're not.
Sure. Yeah.
But I wanted to add something to this, because I think so the way I would have done linkable assets with SparkToro, which everything you said there is good. I love newsjacking, which I think that's great. One of the things I've done in the past for EF is finding those initial influencers that are in the space. And now, like, I know what they're doing. Now I know who they are, right? That my audience engages with the most. And I would go to their accounts, like, say, once a day or every other day. I just see what they're talking about. And if I see, like, all right, out of these 50 people, 10 of them are all talking about the same thing suddenly, like, oh, that might be something, right? So we could create something about this. Then reach out to those 10 influencers, like, hey, check this out. I know you're interested because I'm a stalker. Come and link it to me, or like, check it out. And they share it with their audience. It creates that like snowball effect I actually did this. This is before SparkToro, but everyone in the industry this was like back in 2017, 2018, they were always wondering like, what do these businesses really sell for? And there's no broker at the time who revealed their sales price. So there's all these companies that will come out with these like scraped data sources of like all these listings for this list price. But we had so much businesses, such a good quantity, we revealed our sales price of what they actually sold for with like the actual earnouts. And so all the industry reports died except for mine because I was the only one who had enough data that was real in terms of like not just list price, but real sales price. But yeah, I love this kind of stuff, man. This is cool. Here we go. I think from a source of influencer perspective, that is exactly what I was curious about. Would you see that as a good opportunity of finding topics / discussions that are currently important, and then you can make your own version of those articles / topics?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a reasonable tactic. I would say that it's often better if you can make your own version of it and make it somehow uniquely valuable beyond what's already been written about. So I know that, a lot, at least when I was in the SEO industry, there was a ton of recommendation and advice of like, go find your competitor's content, copy it, make your own version just by being
Make it 20% longer.
Yeah, make it longer, make it newer, right? And that would be whatever. What was this? The skyscraper technique or whatever that people called it, right? And so I don't know about that. Like, I don't think that's a great way to do a linkable asset. I don't think it's necessarily a way to stand out from the crowd. And I do feel generally that there's a little bit of a focus on, especially in SEO, on sort of content quantity and quantity of rankings and traffic versus ability to nudge the brand's overall business goals. And I don't always know that that sort of copy and paste technique, even the longer and newer technique, is a way to drive business results. Sometimes that can actually dilute your brand, turn off your subscribers. If people see, generally speaking, that like your blog or website's content is not consistently useful and interesting and novel, you get into this problem where you start to lose the audience of especially influential sources, people who might amplify your work, and then you lose the audience long-term that you could reach through them. So my preference is to be consistently really outstanding in my field in order to always be, even if it's slower growth, but always be building toward, hey, lots more people want to subscribe, right? They want to long-term come to me, as opposed to one random person finds me in Google every day, that kind of thing.
I often call that debate. So when I'm talking to affiliate site owners, I always view affiliate site owners as like mini media companies. If they really want to become something big, at least, I always frame it as, do you want to be a brochure or do you want to be a magazine, right? Like brochures people throw away, but magazines people keep and they come back to and they subscribe and all that kind of stuff. And I actually have a friend, Kevin Espirito, he was just on our podcast. He like took that. I don't think I was the inspiration for this, but he like did that model, turned his basic gardening affiliate website into a media company. And now he's just raised like $17.5 million from not doing like this copy and paste technique that a lot of SEOs do, but focus on like really high quality kind of content. So I think we have one more question here. Another question, can I see correlated interests that are not the same? Like if someone is interested in veganism, they're also interested in another seemingly unrelated interest.
The answer is yes, if they actually talk about or follow accounts related to that. So for example, let's try vegan, window, this one. Share. All right. So we can say my audience frequently talks about, or maybe includes in their bio, uses these words in their bio, vegan. And then essentially SparkToro doesn't discriminate, right? So it'll just show you in order, what do these people follow and talk about. Okay, so animal rights, that's pretty That seems relatively obvious, but you might find things in here like chef or writer or runner, author, feminist, designer, right? So, and then you could be like, aha, you know what? Maybe I should take a feminist bent on veganism for my next article. Probably a pretty good idea. I bet there's a lot of overlap there, right? And SparkToro is sort of saying, hey, that is explicit in 1 out of 100 folks. You could look in here and say, oh, there's a lot of overlap between vegan and gluten-free. Cool, interesting. A lot of overlap between vegan and organic. A lot of overlap between vegan and the environment.
The running one. Yeah.
I mean, Cats and Catterday is somewhat high too, right? So it could be.
Wait, Catterday?
Catterday, right? The hashtag Catterday.
It's just like a day about cats. I don't know what this is. It sounds cool.
I think that's what it is. I mean, we can find out. So, the nice thing, SparkToro does this thing where you can just
vegan gluten-free cats.
Yeah, so Catterday.
This is the ultimate article.
Like we can look for what is that? Explore the tags Catterday. Yeah, man. It's cats and wizard hats. Like it's awesome, I guess.
Wow,
that's
invite this account owner to play D&D. This is perfect.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting example. I was actually analyzing an actor who is on an LGBTQ friendly television show, and her followers had a very high overlap with D&D. Like they were very interested in the Dungeons and Dragons game, and I was like, oh man, this would be like if I were her and I were thinking about how should I sort of engage my audience, and I might do one of those celebrity D&D things, right? Because that is
for sure, yeah,
probably a great way to re-engage those folks. And so you can see a bunch of data about topics of interest. So you might say, oh, interesting, vegan. There's a strong overlap between vegans and minimum wage or factory farms or whatever, TikTok, right? Or I don't know, public health issues. Yeah. So you could sort of explore what's going on with this.
I really like the what I was trying to mention earlier. Like one of those was running, and that's not like something you initially think of with veganism, but maybe, I mean, you'd have to do more research, obviously, but maybe an article about how does veganism affect your ability to run? Like, does it improve? Or like stories about runners that went vegan? Like that might be of some interest with the crowd. But that's an overlap I certainly didn't think about initially with veganism.
But it's not tiny, right? So it's not huge. The percentile, not huge, but I think that's fairly significant, right? When I look at that overlap, I think that's a content opportunity. That's a positioning opportunity. I would think about it, right? Especially because
it
runners,
could be a good wedge.
Yeah, totally, right? Like runners need a lot of calories and energy and sort of, think about their diet differently than perhaps a less exercise focused vegan might. Maybe there's something there, right? Maybe there's something there from a product perspective.
Like, this is the type of stuff you can eat. And yeah, you can tie it back to your product or your cooking stuff that cooks the products or cooks the food, right?
Right. If you're selling some sort of energy bar that is both vegan and, good fuel for runners, maybe that's your target, right? And you want to look at, okay, show me the overlap. Oh, what do they follow? Okay, I want to check out these accounts. I want to think about these bios. I want to think about these websites, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure. Looks like we have one question, and then I'll let you wrap up here. I want to be cognizant of your time.
Oh, yeah.
Can you upload your email list to sparktoro.com to get audience insights? Is that something you can do with SparkToro?
The answer is yes-ish. Yeah. The answer is yes-ish. Not directly, at least not today. I am talking to Clearbit and Pipple. I don't know how to pronounce their. I think it's pronounced people, but it's PIPL. Anyway, right now today, if you want to upload your email list to SparkToro, you have to first go through identity resolution, meaning you've got to go to Clearbit, full contact people, and upload your email list, get back your social URLs. so Twitter URLs, Facebook URLs, LinkedIn URLs, and upload that to SparkToro. Now, I mentioned we have like, 81-ish million, 82 million public profiles, and there's like 1.5 billion people with public profiles across the internet. So just be aware, you probably want 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 social profiles to match in the identity resolution before you can upload that to SparkToro and get good data on it. But I'll tell you a cheat code, friends. So we had this, there was a brand called Kettle and Fire, right? They make bone broth out in Texas. And they were like, hey, can we use the, custom audiences and do all this identity resolution? Clearbit or Full Contact, I can't remember which, was going to charge them 10 grand or something to resolve all their identities, blah, blah. And we looked and we were like, if you just analyze your own social account, it's really similar. Like the followers of Kettle and Fire on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and whatever, they are very similar to the audience that has given you their email addresses. That's a really cheap way to do the same thing. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So my advice, it's not don't use custom audiences. Look, in some cases, you might have an email list that's really different from what your public social following is like. But if your public social following and your email list are real similar, just analyze your own social account. And if you don't have a public social account that has enough followers or engagement yet, maybe you're new or whatever, that's fine. Go take one of your competitors who has a really similar audience, analyze them.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, where should people follow you, Rand, if they want to get a hold of you? I mean, obviously SparkToro.com, but is there somewhere you like to hang out to communicate with people?
Yeah. You can drop me a line. I'm rand@sparktoro.com, or on Twitter, I'm very active at randfish and LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm glad you've agreed to do a internet marketing celebrity D&D session with me. So we'll have to schedule that time. I'm assuming you agreed. I'm just assuming the close here.
It seems right. I assume Ian Lurie is going to be our DM or whatever. Yeah.
Of course. Well, Red, this is an absolute pleasure. For anyone in the audience, I highly recommend SparkToro. I've been a big fan of them for at least a year. I think it's one of the more underrated tools and just a tool that marketers don't use enough. So thanks again, Rand, for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. Take care.
You too.